Hey, what's up guys? This is Ray and welcome to Asian Filmist, and today we'll be talking about the anime film which was released in 2000, Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, which was directed by Kawajiri Yoshiaki, who is also the director of Ninja Scroll and Demon City Shinjuku. Both the original and this are classics with anime fans, especially if you're as old as I am. And the first one we all watched growing up. The second one, this one, we watched as teenagers, and I think just comparing the two movies are like comparing oil and water. They're just vastly different from each other. But granted, Bloodlust has D. I think that's the only element that this movie shares with the first movie. Everything else is, to put it simply right now, vastly improved, and we'll get into that. But first, with the story of Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, it takes place in the distant future. Vampires rule the land, however, their numbers are very few. They're almost an endangered species. And D, this is the same Vampire Hunter D which appeared in the movie from the 80s. And he's a half-human and half-vampire hybrid vampire hunter. And he also never ages because of the vampire side of him. So they don't really mention how long after the first movie that this story takes place. But regardless, he's hired by this noble family, this noble human family, to retrieve their daughter Charlotte, who was kidnapped by the noble vampire Baron Meyer Link. But while D chases Meyer, he has to race against this band of mercenaries which were also hired by this noble family called the Marcus Brothers. And along the way they have to battle hordes of zombies, Meyer's personal band of mercenary bodyguards called the Barbarois, and of course a deathly figure hidden in the shadows. So as far as the positives are concerned about Bloodlust, well, I love the characters in this. I think, especially D. I think he was cool and badass in the first movie, but he didn't say much, and he didn't have much of a personality in the first movie, but I thought more of it comes out in Bloodlust. I thought, for the most part, he was better written in the story, if that makes any sense. Like, they gave him a lot more to deal with. And I think he was definitely a lot more likable than the first movie, as much as he was already. And not only D, but every character that came on and shared the story with them were all unique and different in their own ways. Like, especially the Marcus Brothers. There were how many? Like 4 or 5 of them, and they're all different. Like, you had the big dude who with the heavy weapon. You had the leader of the Marcus Brothers was kind of an archer of sorts. He had this mini crossbow mounted on his wrist, and you had the blade fighter. You had the girl who was quick and good with the gun, and then you had the psychic who was who he had a very frail and weak body. He was always bedridden on kind of this pseudo hospital bed in their trailer. But what his power was is he can he can manifest his consciousness and make like a ghost and just wreck on fools. And I think every character was different, and not only the Marcus Brothers, but also the Barbarois, which were Baron Meyer's bodyguards, as I said earlier, and they're all mutants and monsters. And in the first movie we met like one mutant, the guy who can bend space and time around his body, but here we get, what was it, like 3 or 4, and they're all different too. And something that I appreciate when it came to exploring how different each of the characters were is that they don't spoon feed information as to how every character's powers or abilities work. Rather, they show you the characters use their powers in action, and they might mention a little thing or two, but they don't go full 100% explaining their powers. And it's really all up to the viewer to interpret and understand how everyone's powers work. And I think that's great, because one kind of trope I always see in anime is that there's always this character on the side. He could be an observer, he could even be the character himself, but they'll just talk about their powers, like, oh, my power lets me do this, and then that's one example. And then another one, as I mentioned earlier, is like, oh, so and so, oh, he's about to do that, and that gives him the ability to do this. And I think that's just it's a common and accepted trait in anime, but I just think that's just lazy writing. And going back to the characters, Meyer Link was a fantastic villain. Compared to the lead vampire villain in the first movie, I thought he was kind of dull. He really didn't have much to him, but Meyer Link I thought was a much more excellent character. He had surprising depth, And when you get to know more of his backstory as the story goes on, you kind of get to a point where you have to change your opinion about him. You kind of question your initial impression about Link, especially when from the time when you get introduced to his character and you see him in action, and then automatically you think, oh, he's the bad guy, you gotta kill him, D, you gotta kill him. But as the story goes on, you kind of don't want D to kill him. And it's probably because, the character is pretty damn cool to see in action, but you get to learn more about the character, and he becomes a very sympathetic soul. And we gotta talk about the art style, and the animation, because holy crap, was it amazing. Like, this movie came out in 2000, but it looks a lot better than movies that come out, this year, like 2018. The detail that's presented in the artwork, the way everyone is drawn, it's just so detailed, it's just so amazing to look at, and the animation just moves so fluidly, everything moves so smoothly and silky, and the way I feel about the way everything was colored. I mean, how can something be both dark and vivid at the same time? The colors, even though most of it was black, this is a vampire story, everything just pops in this movie. And as I said, the quality of the animation and the way everyone was drawn, it was definitely a more retro look, a more classic style of drawing these characters. It's kind of hard for me to describe, but you take a look at the way these characters are drawn, and they definitely look like they were designed in the 80s. But to see them move in the same way as modern anime does, for me, that just made my heart happy. And needless to say, the action sequences were fire. Even to this day, it's some of the best fight sequences between D, the Marcus brothers, and all the mutants they come across, the Barbarois. Because every character was so different in their powers and their design, it just made the fights all the more fun. And of course, I love the world that Vampire Hunter D takes place in. I mean, it takes place in the future, but it's essentially the Wild Wild West. All the characters in the story, they're kind of trapped in a more primitive time almost, as far as the way cities are built, the kind of facilities they have access to. However, the machines and technology that they use, it's definitely futuristic. I mean, I don't even know if there are any horses which are living mammals in this movie. I think for most of the part, they're all machines. Although they kind of carry on like they're living beings. So it's kind of hard to say, and that's pretty cool. It has a lot of cyberpunk elements into it. And the weapons that they use, you got lasers, and even the crossbow. That's the wrist-mounted crossbow that the main Marcus brother uses. That's definitely something that's a unique design and definitely futuristic. I love this movie. Definitely one of my favorite anime movies of all time. But if I had to pick something, there is something I have negative to say about this. I think it's the way the final boss comes to be. And this is something that I have a problem with, not only in this movie, but anytime they decide to utilize this, is that when they bring out a character in the final act that there is no build-up to previously, leading up to that moment. They just bring in this character in the final act, and suddenly, boom, they're the bad guy and the main villain. And it's like, I don't know. I prefer a villain that we get to know throughout the duration of the movie, rather than just at the final act. I know a lot of games and RPGs do that. Like one of my favorite RPGs of all time, Final Fantasy IV, does that. The bad guy just comes out of nowhere in the final act of the story, and that's what kind of happens here. So overall, what do I have to say about Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust? Well, as I said earlier, it's one of my favorite anime movies of all time. In the realm of action and adventure stories, this is definitely up there, and it's a vast improvement over the first movie. The first movie felt so low budget. This one, it felt like there was a whole lot of money put into just everything, from the animation, the voice acting, the character design, just everything. Felt like there was a lot more budget put into it. And it makes you kind of sad because they haven't released another entry in Vampire Hunter D's story since this movie came out. This movie came out in 2000. This was 18 years ago. But yes, please watch Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust if you are able to. It's definitely a film you just gotta watch if you even call yourself somewhat of a fan of anime. You just gotta do it. But yes, those are my thoughts on Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. What did you guys think? What kind of questions did you guys have? Let me know in the comment section below. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. And by all means, please support Asian Films on Patreon, because it definitely helps the channel a lot. And hey, do you know I started a Discord server for those of us who want to come together and chat about Asian films, and not just Asian films strictly, but movies in general. You'll find an invite link in the description area below. And yeah, that's about it for me, guys. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you all again in the next video. Take it easy.